All right, everybody, welcome to another deep dive. Ready to go?
Always ready to dive in. What are we looking at today?
Well, today we're talking about something that kind of caught my eye a little while back, and I was like, wait, what was that about?
Oh, yeah.
So it turns out it's like this weird thing that keeps popping up in history, and I wanted to get your take on it.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Lay it
Yeah.
on me.
All right, so we're talking about Greenland and the Panama Canal.
Interesting choices. Both very different, but both strategically important.
Exactly, and that's what I thought was so fascinating, and I found this article from CBS News back from 2019. It's called "Why Would Trump Want Greenland and the Panama Canal? Here's What's Behind U.S. Interests."
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Making headlines, everyone was a little puzzled.
Yeah, I was like, hold on, did he really just try to buy Greenland?
Right, like out of the blue.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to dig into today.
Yeah.
The history of U.S. interests in these places, why they're important, and what it all means in the grand scheme of things.
Sounds like a plan. Let's dive in.
Okay, so first up, Greenland. When I think of Greenland, I think icebergs, polar bears, like a vast frozen landscape.
Yeah, it's definitely got that image, but it's also much more than that.
So where do we even start with this whole U.S. interest thing?
Well, we've got to go back in time a bit. The article mentions that Trump wasn't actually the first president to try and buy Greenland.
Oh, really? Someone else had the same idea.
Yeah, back in 1946, President Truman offered to buy it from Denmark for a cool $100 million.
Wow, so this fascination goes way back. But why Greenland?
Think about it. This is right at the start of the Cold War. Tensions are rising between the U.S. and the Soviet Union.
Right. Yeah, the whole world was kind of holding its breath.
Exactly. And Greenland's location, right smack in the middle of North Atlantic between North America and Europe, makes it strategically crucial.
So it's all about location, location, location.
You got it. It was like a giant listening post for monitoring Soviet activities during the Cold War.
Like a frosty watchtower in the Arctic.
Exactly. But it's not just about location. Greenland's got another ace up its sleeve. Resources.
Resources. Like what? More ice.
No, I think oil, natural gas, and those super valuable rare earth minerals everyone's talking about.
Oh, right. I've heard those are used in all sorts of high-tech stuff.
Yep, everything from smartphones to military equipment. And guess what? Climate change is making those resources more accessible.
Oh, wow. So the melting ice is actually kind of like unlocking this treasure chest of resources.
Exactly. And that's why other countries like China are starting to take notice too. They need resources to fuel their growing economy.
So Greenland's caught in this global tug of war between superpowers.
You could say that it's become a hot commodity in a rapidly changing world.
This is making my head spin a little bit. So from icy spy outpost to a potential resource gold mine.
That's Greenland in a nutshell, and it's a story that's still unfolding.
Okay, well, speaking of strategically important places in global competition, we've got to talk about the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing is practically an icon, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the most important waterways in the world.
Yeah, like a shortcut across the entire globe.
Exactly. Ships can travel between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans without having to go all the way around South America.
Saves a ton of time and money, I bet.
You bet. It's a huge boost for global trade and naval power. And the article points out how vital the canal has been to U.S. interests throughout history.
Yeah, I was reading about that, and it seems like the U.S. was pretty determined to get control of it.
That's putting it mildly. They employed some tactics that we might call gunboat diplomacy today.
Gunboat diplomacy. That sounds a little aggressive.
Well, in the early 1900s, the U.S. really wanted that canal, and they weren't afraid to throw their weight around to make it happen.
So what do they do?
They supported Panama's independence from Colombia in 1903, which conveniently paved the way for them to build and control the canal.
Wow, so they kind of engineered the whole thing to get what they wanted.
You could say that it was a bold move and definitely a prime example of how far they were willing to go to secure their interests.
So we've got Cold War maneuvering in Greenland and a power play for the Panama Canal. It's amazing how history is all connected.
It really is. And these historical events shape the world we live in today.
So how do these stories of Greenland and the Panama Canal play into the world today? Does the U.S. still care about these places as much as they used to?
Oh, absolutely. They still matter a lot, but the context has shifted a bit.
In what way?
Well, the Cold War's over, but Russia is still a major player in the Arctic, and China's rise as a global power adds a whole new layer of complexity.
All right, it's like a whole new set of players have entered the game.
Exactly. And with the Arctic melting, new shipping routes are opening up and access to resources is becoming even more important.
So Greenland's strategic location becomes even more valuable.
Exactly. It's like the whole game board is being redrawn.
And what about the Panama Canal?
It's facing its own set of challenges, like bigger ships that can't fit through, and the impact of climate change on water levels.
So even these seemingly permanent fixtures on the world map are having to adapt.
Exactly. It's a constant process of change and adaptation.
Wow, this is making me rethink my whole understanding of geography and global politics.
It's a fascinating and complex landscape that's always evolving.
So what's the big takeaway here? What should we be thinking about as we navigate this ever-changing world?
I think the key question is, how do we balance national interests with global cooperation?
That's a tough one.
It is, especially when you consider the ethical and environmental implications of actions like gunboat diplomacy or resource extraction.
Right, we can't just repeat the mistakes of the past.
Exactly. We need to find more sustainable and equitable ways to move forward.
It's like we need a new playbook for the 21st century.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's always fascinating to explore these complex issues.
And it makes you wonder what the future holds for Greenland and the Panama Canal.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us and keep exploring.
Until next time.